Hello and welcome to the Long Talk here on New Zealand Sports Radio. And we've got an interesting one today because it's not really just one sport, but it's going to be many sports that we're going to be talking about. Because I've got Jan Shearer, the head of snow sports, on for a chat today. How are you doing?
Hi, Paul. I'm good, thank you.
Now,
Holed up in my bubble still, pretty much, and working remotely.
so you, even though at level 2 now, you're still still sort of still doing remote working, and then and waiting for further guidance as to as when the sort of groups get bigger than 10.
Yes, we are. Although some people are going back to the office in Wanaka, but for the most part, people are working remotely.
Cool. Now, snow sports, clearly skiing, snowboarding. Do you also do things like bobsleighs and all of that sort of thing? How big and broad does snow sports cover?
Well, we really cover the 5 disciplines as well as adaptive, and that's snowboard, free ski, cross country, park and pipe, and alpine. So we're responsible for those disciplines all under one umbrella. Those other sports you mentioned, and anything ice as well, which is included in the Winter Olympics, doesn't fall under the snow sports NSO umbrella.
So, so when you say pipe, you're talking. Yeah, okay, we're talking again. That's on snowboards, not a pipe as in a track.
Well, correct. The half pipe I'm talking about is either snowboard or
Awesome.
Skiing. Yeah, female, male. There's events in that discipline. Yeah.
So, did you grow up skiing? Are snow sports being something that's been in your blood for your whole life?
Yeah, I have grown up skiing, just predominantly recreationally. Did a few club races, but yeah, a sport that I've loved really, and our whole family skis, so it's been a large part of my life.
So, and the other sort of the big thing that you're kind of famous for is your yachting, obviously, having been to the Olympics 3 times and a medal there. So, was it yachting during the summer and skiing during the winter, or did you yacht all year round?
Yeah, a bit of that, but obviously when we went to Europe in the European summer, the skiing was cut short. Yeah, and I pretty much did yachting for 3 Olympic cycles, and that accumulated to about 12 years. So that was great, and obviously hugely committed to the sailing at that time. But it was different to what it is now, in that we were let's say not as professional, because that wasn't really a possibility. We didn't have the high performance sport funding that they do now, so we would self fund to an extent, and therefore we were working. Also, we'd train after work, go to the gym at lunchtimes, and then race in the weekends here. And there used to be quite large domestic fleets, which is quite different to what it is now. So it was possible to do it like that, and then have a couple of trips to Europe or the States or Asia, and benchmark yourself and compete internationally, and do your qualifications and your world championships and that sort of thing. So it was quite different, but nonetheless all consuming. If we weren't training for fitness or working or fundraising, we were competing or working on the boat, all that same sort of level of commitment.
So, and did you grow up sort of in a boat as a kid, or what were your first sporting memories?
Well, no, I'd be a little bit of an outlier, and I'd also be a case study for balance is better, I guess, the latest catchphrase from Sport New Zealand, because I did do a lot of sports right through my teenage years, and it wasn't really until I shifted to Auckland that I pursued sailing. It was just per chance, getting friendly with someone who was a girl who was a laser sailor, and just took it up from there. And then within about 18 months, I think I scraped into the team to go to the World Championships, and that sort of set me on a competitive international pathway. And then not long after that, the Olympics had the sport of women's yachting for the very first time in 1988, and so that then became a goal, and it was in the 470 class. So I pursued that with one of my colleagues or peers, Fiona Galloway, and we ended up qualifying for the Olympics in Seoul, and that was sort of the first time, that women had been in their own, in their own class and their own discipline at the Games for yachting.
ended up, I think there's a bit more to it than just sort of stumbling into it. I think a lot of effort goes into those sort of things. But amazing that, yeah, the meteoric rise, a year and a half from picking up the sport to going to the World Championships.
Yeah, it wasn't. I had done it. I won't say it was from woe to go. I had recreationally sailed, and like I said, that sort of bit of trying all different sports, and I did the traditional ones, like netball and tennis and varying ballet and all the different things that kids try. So I had done a little bit of sailing. It wasn't from zero.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
And you qualified as a mechanical design engineer. So that's I guess mechanical, working on the boat. That all helps all work together during that period, or was that totally separate?
Not really, because it was an office-based job. It was a design engineering job that I had, and I specialised in mechanical services really, and I did that pretty much right throughout my career, a sailing career, because I kept working the whole time, at least in part. Decent chunks of time off as well, but yeah, that is what I did. Yeah.
And then over to Spain with your husband as he was working on America's Cup teams. Did you carry on design work over there, or what were you doing over in Europe?
Well, actually, when we went to Europe, which was 2004 for the America's Cup, prior to that, we'd already lived overseas in Switzerland and America with the America's Cup as well. But we moved for an extended period of time to Valencia with the family. I had two children then. They were 10 and 14 by this stage. And so I stopped working. I was only working part-time, but I stopped in 2004 with my engineering job. Mm-hmm. And obviously couldn't work in Spain. And so, but that was fine, because it gave an opportunity to explore the country and do lots of fun things and hang with the expat group, which was involved. Something like 500 families had moved to Valencia for the America's Cup, so there was a big community there, and it was a lot of fun.
500 families, wow! That's it's a small industry in itself.
Yes.
By that. Obviously, with the America's Cup coming back to New Zealand, hopefully over the summer, but only just 4 boats this time, so a smaller fleet, I guess, than the one that you guys were, or the community you guys were involved in over there.
Definitely, I think yes, it's the difficulty of the design of the boat, and the economic climate, and varying other factors. I think having the new design of the boat has made it harder for new teams to enter the Cup, let's say, this time around. But it'll still be a really high standard and a spectacular event.
Spectacular, definitely. I saw a picture of Luna Rosa, who managed to get their boat to jump out of the water this last week. So yes, it's going to be. I think it's going to be very spectacular when it does come back. Any thought of these sort of foiling things, getting involved in some smaller disciplines or Olympic disciplines, do you think, or is it or is this foiling going to mean to still stay this kind of top end elite class of sailing?
Oh, no, not at all. The NACRA 17 is a foiling cat that's in the Olympics this time around, and previously it wasn't foiling, but they've modified it to make it foiling. So definitely heading that way. Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of little boats that are foiling as well now. So yeah, it's right through. And the windsurfing. You can foil on the windsurfer and kite foil and all sorts. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities for foiling now.
Now it looks like it's the one that's taking off. I'll be honest, not being a massive follower of, or not being a big follower of surfing. Yachting. That's when you see the America's Cup, that's the bit where you guess it's a shop window, isn't it, to us casual viewers. So then but after that, then you decided that sports administration was the thing for you. So what made you kind of move into that space?
Well, I came back from Valencia, and pretty much everybody was working, so it was kind of like, oh well, if you can't beat them, join them. So I thought, oh well, I probably should go back to work, and it took me quite a while to figure out what to do, because I considered going back to engineering, but then I also had a lifetime of experience in high performance sport. And I had done a master's and I'd done my thesis or my dissertation in youth sport and, the factors that contributed to longevity in sport and, with the potential to perform on the international stage. And so I just sort of explored the sector a little bit, and where I ended up was in tennis. I mean, I loved tennis and followed it and played it at a club level. And that's where I ended up getting a role, and I was the head of performance for tennis for 5 years, which was great, and it was a great team to work for, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, actually. So yeah, I was doing that, and then I also still did some voluntary work in the sailing space as well. And my daughter campaigned for the 2016 Olympics, so I was, and she went to those. So yeah, I was pretty involved in sport one way or another.
So you said you had 2 kids. So was it? You said a daughter and a son. So your son with one didn't pick up the sporting the sporting bug like the rest of the family.
Well, he does a lot of sport, and he did represent New Zealand in sailing, but it was almost like a conscious decision that you could pursue an Olympic dream and maybe not get there and end up with no medal and no money. So he virtually made a conscious decision, and he loved university and studying, and so he just pursued that pathway, and he's a software engineer.
And you're touching on there that 4 years comes down to in some disciplines 1 race, but in yachting you're talking it's a regatta, so it's about sort of 8 or 9 races, but basically again 1 event that defines your 4 years worth of effort. How did you kind of cope with that as a mentally or emotionally, and how did you help when you're dealing with your sort of your high performance athletes? How do you help them with that as well? Because it's a lot of focus on a very short period of time. And if it doesn't quite go right, you're a bad day. That can be quite devastating.
Indeed, and that definitely does happen. But what nowadays it's more focused on training for a pinnacle event, like the funding from high performance sport is based around you performing at a pinnacle event, which does emulate the Olympic situation, not as much as possible, because when you do go to the Olympics, it's also a big occasion, and you can be overwhelmed by that as well. So it is about performing at an event. And then with yachting, it's up to about 15 races, short races. When we did it, it was 7, but it's still quite a long event. And I think that you have enough time to, well, I found that I had enough time, you're anxious and maybe you're wondering what's going to happen, sort of thing, but you do just calm yourself into it, because it is a long event and you've done it so often, and it just feels like another race, which is one of the sort of cliche things that they say. And when you're going to perform at an event, you don't want it to be something that's different to what you've done before. So each time you race, you're thinking about, I'm going to do my very best. This is what I do. I feel comfortable with this, and so it's just duplicating that over and over and over again until it becomes completely automatic. So and it's not gonna. The occasion is not going to overwhelm you.
So that's when you're working with those in tennis, that's what you're doing, was saying, right, guys, we're going to emulate going to, say, the Olympics by targeting, say, the ATP Classic, is it called, in Auckland, or you target one event that year to be kind of like let's treat this in the same way as you'll treat the Olympics, to help them get used to that kind of preparation and ramping up?
Well, actually, my role in tennis was a little different to that, because it's a professional sport. So here in New Zealand, the professionals aren't based here. So there's those who are professionals funding themselves, looking after themselves. They're all offshore.
Right.
So we were more about an athlete development pathway, and trying to help the juniors move up the ranks. And that was much further down the food chain, as in the ITF area, and then they do age group representative team stuff. To go to the Olympics in tennis, for a young person, it's a long, hard road. And that wasn't really our key focus. Let's say we were working towards getting someone into the top 100 at ranking, and that was starting right from 10, 12 years old, and so you're trying to formulate that pathway through there. That said, the professionals, New Zealanders who were offshore, they did in doubles go to the 2016 Olympics, and I guess I facilitated that, let's say, and went through the admin that was required to get them entered and qualified and all of that sort of thing into the actual games, and they went and competed there. So that was great. But yeah, the role at tennis was more about managing the team. We had a team of 5. We had a tournaments director and 2 high performance coaches, strength and conditioning coach, and so we would select squads and then give them opportunities to see if we could get 1 or 2 or 3 or however many to sort of step out and be able to compete internationally. So they had the opportunity, those top group, to go to Europe and test themselves. And for tennis, it's pretty difficult because we have so many clubs with the AstroTurf, which is not great for athlete development. There was a lot of challenges. We were very remote. Lots of obstacles to overcome, but we did our best, and we got some of the best results actually the juniors have had in a very long time. So that was great. We had a couple of athletes at the Junior Grand Slams, and they qualified for the World Teams Finals in the under 16 and under 18 groups, which is the top 16 countries only. So we were pretty happy with that, with our achievements along the way. But then, so then a few things changed, and an opportunity came up with snow sports. So I ended up moving to snow sports and have been there for 2.5 years.
But it's interesting though that the high performance is perhaps defined slightly differently depending which sport you're in. In some sports, it is going to be dealing with those top stars, but as you say, in other sports, those top stars will look after themselves, and actually, it's about creating the sort of filling the funnel of getting enough people through and providing pathways for those that want to progress for them, and so that they can progress. Whereas, I've seen talking to some other sports, they haven't got those pathways in place yet, and if you don't have that, you're not going to have that sustainability and that continued delivery of people. So, as head of snow sports, when at the end of each year or when you do your review, how much of it is down to how are you graded? Is it down to how many people make it as a professional, or how many total participants we have, or what are your sort of KPIs as a CEO of snow sports?
Well, there's really 2 strands to the business. There's one that's this sort of service to the members and administration of the sport. And in that side of the business, we would try and provide some sort of pathway, bearing in mind, though, that the ski resorts are the ones that really provide the programs for the athlete development, and we just string it together, and we would write rules, we'd calendar events, we facilitate entries to overseas overseas races, and then we would also develop selection criteria and provide rankings, and also any major events, we team up and select athletes and get uniforms and provide coaching and so on and so forth. So that's one strand of the business. And then the other strand is the high performance strand, which is quite a big part of our business, because the athletes have succeeded on the international stage. And in fact, the last games, there was 2 bronze medals and 3 Paralympic medals. So there was 5 medals in total for snow sports, which gives us a reasonable amount of funding from high performance sport. And so that pathway is measured, with podium finishes and at pinnacle events all the way through. And so in that, we have actually got a whole pathway that's up and running, because we employ development coaches and elite athlete coaches. So in terms of a KPIs, at the end of the day, the Olympics is the tell all, but obviously you have to be tracking towards that and show various milestones along the 4-year pathway.
So I mean, alpine and sort of the cross country or Nordic skiing, they've got a long history, and it's always been the sort of Olympics has been the pinnacle for that. But your freestyles, your half pipes, your snowboarding, it's potentially been the X Games or other sort of Red Bull Games or those kind of events. So, but you guys concentrate mainly on the Olympic disciplines and not some rather than sort of success at those other events.
Well, Park and Pipe would be the one that we have the pathway for, and we're well funded through High Performance Sport, because we had the success in the big air and the half pipe, and then of course the adaptive as well with the 2 athletes, Adam Hall and Corey Peters, competing and medaling at the Olympics. So those are our main pathway, with complete pathway. Sitting underneath us is Freeride World Tour, which isn't an Olympic event, and New Zealand does incredibly well at that also, with several athletes on the World Tour. Alpine is a very competitive and global sport, as is cross country. So those sports are really difficult to podium in, let's say. However, in saying that, we've had a young athlete come through, just incredibly talented, and has airdropped herself right into the top end of the competition in GS. So that's Alice Robinson, and she's just a phenomenal athlete, and has pretty much done it herself with the family backing and training overseas. And so that she will now be targeted towards the Olympics, but obviously along the way she also is doing her World Cup campaign, which is sort of the international FIS pathway.
So yeah, so GS for those giant slalom. So that's the kind of halfway between sort of downhill and slalom. If you've watched watch skiing, so okay, so she's done all that through a lot of it sort of self funded and motivated. But now that she's got there, she'll get more support from NZ Sport.
High Performance Sport New Zealand. Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Get the right way around. So the on that side, so on the park and the half pipe, obviously you need parks and half pipes to be set up. So do we have many of those in New Zealand? I've only ever skied down in I've gone blank, Mount Ruapehu, and I didn't see one there. So is there many facilities in that for people to experience those or try out those sports, those disciplines?
That's a really good question for right now. We have a strong partnership with both Cadrona and NZ Ski, and NZ Ski supports the alpine athletes with lane space and training facilities. But Cadrona, they have been fantastic and have supported snow sports and their program through building features for the park and pipe. And they, if you go there, the terrain park is just a kid's dream, or it's amazing. And then for the elite athletes, there is a half pipe and there's a big air and a slope style course that they can train on. So we are reliant on the resorts to provide that for us. And in fact, this year with COVID, the resorts don't have the volume of customers coming through, nor the international teams, which in effect, support the build of those features. So there's a few challenges coming up for us this season regards that. So obviously it's essential for the events and for the daily training environment that those facilities are available. And they're not available at every resort, that's for sure.
So being so a lot of the athletes, I mean, these sports are very big out of Europe the US in particular, obviously. And so when they haven't got snow, we do. So do we see those teams coming down here for training? Are we and therefore do we sort of get some sort of cash by hiring out training venues for them?
Yes, international teams will come down and rent lane space or pay to use the facilities, to pay the resorts to use the facilities. Yeah, and that helps us, of course, as well, because we can get to use them for free. So that's a great deal for everybody, really. But particularly with the Park and Pipe, because we have such a strong fields within New Zealand, and as you've said, there's no snow in the Northern Hemisphere when there's snow down here in the Southern Hemisphere. We do get quite a few high-level international competitors coming down and joining us. So that's great for everybody. Yeah.
Do we have? I should check this. Do we? What kind of events do we have? Do we have World Tour events for those as well? So do things like the X Games and Red Bull and stuff come down here and host events in New Zealand?
Well, the main events are the ANCs, which is Australia New Zealand Cup, and we have that both in Park and Pipe and Alpine.
Mm-hmm.
But then Winter Games run World Cup events as well, and so they put on those events, those FIS events, which are fantastic opportunities for our New Zealanders to compete in an international field and get points for their ranking, for their FIS rankings, which then give them World Cup start places. And so they're the main events. The World Cup events would be the highest level events that we would run here. The ANCs are what you would call continental cups, which sit underneath the World Cup in terms of status or hierarchy in the FIS system.
Oh, so we do have World Cup downhills and Grand Slaloms here. So
No, in the Park and Pipe. World Cup's only in the Park and Pipe, not in Alpine. Alpine, we have Continental Cup, which is the ANCs.
Yep.
And then we have ANCs in the Park and Pipe as well. But then additionally, we have World Cups in Park and Pipe only.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, the other seasons run sort of October, November probably through to about April, May, up in the Northern Hemisphere. I used to ski a lot in Andorra a long time ago. When you say that that they've not been able to construct the parks and pipes, I've seen them covered in snow. I assumed that there's quite a lot of earthworks beneath that, and that basically, or are they just built purely out of snow and disappear each year?
Oh, don't ask me too many questions.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, it's just like I'm not a civil engineer or a designer of a half pipe. No, but jokes aside, there is a lot of earthworks. You're absolutely right. And they built the first year I started, we built a big air jump, and that was a lot of earthworks. And more recently, there's been earthworks done for the half pipe, which is a lot of work. But then on top of that, there's a lot of movement of snow required, in particular for the half pipe. So that's a big piece of work as well, with the snow groomers and shifting snow around to pack it and get it all right. And then the half pipe is cut sort of on a regular basis to keep it in shape. I mean, it's an incredible feature when you see them in real life. They're sort of a work of art. And I know that overseas, when especially at big events like the Olympics or the Dew Tour or the X Games, they look spectacular. Whether it's the slope style course or the big air or the half pipe, they're real features that are pretty awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of work in building these features. And they're
a lot scarier and higher up than you think when you're actually on them.
Absolutely. It's incredible actually how high they go on the half pipe and the big air. It's amazing.
So I did ski a lot as a kid and did ski down a half pipe once. I thought, not doing that again. So they will require construction. Now I did see that the government is working with the ski resorts about looking at getting them open, both for recreational, at least it was in the papers. Obviously having to manage congestion areas around chairlifts, etc., and cleaning all those down. So you are encouraged that you will have some sort of season here this year, but not as big, obviously, without all the international teams coming down, etc.
Yeah, well, obviously the borders are closed at the moment, so there won't be any international people coming down unless the only chance would be if the borders were open to Australians.
Yep.
Really, that's what it seems at the moment, and so that, of course, has had a huge impact on the ski resorts. Not only, their clientele has reduced significantly, but it was also the unknown, and so there's a lot of preparation that has to go in for those ski fields, and that just even as simple as hiring staff, and like we're talking about the earthworks and the prepping of the resort, snowmaking, etc., etc. So they do need, reasonable lead-in times, and so it's difficult for them to commit to that when they don't actually, and they didn't, and they still don't entirely know what is going to happen. I mean, who knows? We could have another outbreak of COVID and everything gets shut down again. Don't know. So that has been incredibly difficult for them, and I know that they've worked really, really hard to try and figure stuff out and, predict what's the best model to go forward. And in fact, just recently that some of the resorts have come out with, we're going to open for the school holidays, and then we're going to open just at the weekends, or we'll open 3 days a week and then maybe 5 days a week if demand's right, etc., etc. Or we maybe, they'll scale. They'll only open a couple of lifts or whatever. But certainly, I mean, I'm based in Auckland at the moment, and there's lots of people here saying, well, I can't go to Fiji, and I'm not, that your trip's cancelled, so let's have a big South Island ski holiday instead. So there will be more domestic. I'm pretty sure there'll be more domestic market than they've had previously, but it won't measure up to what they would normally expect if the borders were open, because we do have a number of international teams coming and training here, and lots of visitors from Asia as well as Australia, of course. Yeah.
But so, do you hope to run a national set of events this year, or you postponing, or still up in the air as to what?
We're really optimistic that we will be able to run local, regional, and national events. Yeah, that's the aim, and we're still running with that. It may be modified somewhat, condensed down, just to try and economise, etc. But we're hoping that we can do some part of our calendar.
Now, other sports, things like basketball, etc., have found that some of their sort of professionals who would normally be overseas have got sort of trapped or found themselves in New Zealand, and therefore might turn out for that. Are you expecting to experience any of that? Are there any sort of New Zealand professionals who are here that you wouldn't normally expect to have in country that might turn up for these national events?
Not really, no. In terms of our team, we repatriated everybody once the borders started to close, because there were a number of athletes who were in fact in at competitions and in training camps. So we, everybody in our squad came home. But I'm unaware of an international, or there may be the odd one or two who may have come in here and got stuck here, and so therefore can train with us over the winter.
Okay, but you'd normally have all your people here over the winter anyway. They wouldn't normally be travelling around. Okay.
No.
I see.
We normally have a training block in New Zealand over the New Zealand winter.
Now, I guess in some ways the way the calendar works, obviously, you said you're Olympic based, but obviously that not Tokyo Olympics. You were talking about the 2022 Olympics. So I guess from that point of view, your Olympic preparations, whilst obviously they've been impacted, you've got time to cope with that, and that's not had the same sort of impact as a Summer Olympics sport, kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. And our long-term goal is still Beijing 2022, and we need to keep focused on that. However, it has been impacted, as you say, because we brought athletes back early from the Northern Hemisphere, so they missed a couple of training blocks and competition blocks. And then Winter Games we're going to run 6 World Cup events for our Park and Pipe athletes, and they're unable to run those FIS events because the borders are closed. FIS have said that, unless international teams can arrive at the events and the borders aren't closed or heavily restricted, if that's not the case, then you can't accumulate points and run FIS races. So for now, those can't be run at all. The ANC races are also in being able to compete and benchmark yourself against your international peers. But hopefully we'll be able to have good daily training environment here in New Zealand, and we'll be able to keep training.
But from a financial point of view, does that impact you not having those events? Do you get financial sort of income from those events as well?
Some, and sort of, through the back channels, it comes, some money, etc., comes back to us for sure. But the main problem for us now is that normally these features that would be at Cardrona for the Park and Pipe team, they are not going to be built because of the scaling back of Cardrona's activity this season. And so we will have to contribute to building those features so our athletes have a daily training environment, and that's a direct impact of COVID. So that's what we're working through right now with High Performance Sport and Sport New Zealand, because of course, the response and recovery package that is being offered is, related to how everybody's been directly affected by COVID.
Yep.
And that's one area that we have been really heavily affected. I mean, there's other implications from COVID as well, and that the Class 4 gaming has stopped, and then trust grants have stopped, and lotto money isn't the same, which we received through Sport New Zealand. So there's a number of impacts, from a lot of different angles actually. So the main one is the daily training environment for our
the facilities, right? Rather than financial impact.
Yeah.
Just so people know, we're talking on Friday, gone blank. The 15th, so the day after the budget, and the sporting part of the budget hasn't been announced yet. So hence, just if you're thinking, why aren't they talking about XYZ money? Well, that's because we're talking before that XYZ money has been announced, which is probably going to come out in the next couple of days. And I guess actually, so one of those pieces that you've touched on there is that gambling money. I know that that tennis is going to be heavily impacted because the Grand Slams haven't been available. So with TAB gambling, does skiing is skiing much of a gambling sport? Do you get much? Is there much that comes that way from there, or you just don't have the same exposure?
No. The TAB in New Zealand hasn't got snow sports on their repertoire, if you like. But so we're not reliant on the TAB. Certainly, not like tennis, which was well funded by TAB.
Which you'll have experience of, because obviously, you were there previously. There was definitely a report about on that side of things. So, as you've been in there for 2 years now, we've talked about sort of the immediate things. What are your long-term plans for snow sports in New Zealand? Is it around trying to get more venues or working with venues and having more competitions? Is it around having more athletes and trying to get them get better rankings in certain areas? What's the sort of the 5-year or vision for snow sport?
Well, I think we focus on a competitive pathway, and so it's about demonstrating that there is a pathway, and making having transparency through that, and providing opportunities for athletes that want to pursue that. That's pretty much the main focus for snow sports. But additionally, we are a service organisation to our members. We're a member-based organisation, and so we also focus on nationally reaching out to our members and with news and information, and also education and opportunities for them. And I guess what we're doing there is sort of pulling it together through a calendar, and providing a central focus for facilities and administration, and opportunities for those who want to go overseas and pursue their dreams. Ultimately, right now, as you said before, New Zealand is so focused on the Olympics. That's really the long-term, the medium-term goal is the 2022 Olympics. But then, you discussed before, it's essential to have a pipeline of athletes coming through, and so there's some succession planning, and so the athlete development space is very important too, to keep that going, and the pathway is sustainable.
So as part of that membership thing, is that also making sure you have enough ski instructors and running ski instructors courses around that? I know Basie used to be the one that a lot of people were used up in Europe. Is there a set? If someone wants to become a ski instructor, what qualifications do we have do you use down here?
So that the ski instructing is really sitting with the with another authority, and they work at the ski resort. So we don't we do coaching as opposed to ski instructing, yeah. And so quite likely the coaches have been ski instructors, and then they've gone into athlete development, and then maybe performance, and then start working with elite athletes. So then that development would come via high performance sport, because to become a high performance or elite coach, you have to be working with athletes who are behaving like high performance athletes. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. So you need some athletes who are performing and behaving like high performance athletes, and then the coach, grows with them, if you like, and then once they have success, there's fantastic development opportunities through high performance sport and their coach accelerator programs, and mentorships, and the Prime Minister's scholarships for development, etc., etc. So that's really that pathway. The other thing that we do is the rules for events, and hold judging courses, timing courses, because obviously timing's a big part for alpine and sports like that, as opposed to judging, which is the park and pipe and the big air and the slope style, etc. So there's judging courses, and there's timing courses that we run, and then there's the race organising committees that actually run the events, and so we provide some training for those people as well, and that's pretty much a volunteer-based operation. And what usually happens is that there's lots of clubs around the country, and they will have parents or volunteers who help run the races, and so they need some support as well.
Cool. So yeah, marshals and all of that side of things as well. Yep. Understood. Great. Thank you very much. It's been insightful as to what's going on in the snow sports space. Any final things I've missed out, or that you'd like to push as to where people can sort of find information, or if they want to, or you said, I think you said you had newsletters or something to go out that people can sign up for?
Yeah, well, we have a website and a Facebook page that's kept up to date. If you follow the Facebook page, we're the first with the results for any of our New Zealand athletes. And quite often it's fun for me. In the morning, you wake up and I wonder what's happened in Europe overnight, and go on our Facebook page, and there it'll be, and a link to the live video or feed or whatever. So that's where the sort of hub of information from our end is. As I say, it's pretty much, that's based around the competitive pathway and how the athletes are doing. Yep. But then there's also and the calendar is our other main sort of information piece, if you like. And so where all our point systems are run, and selection documents, etc., etc. So that's all sitting there.
Great. Thank you very much for your time. Folks, I'll put a link down below to that Facebook page and website. So if you're interested, go and click on that. If you're listening to the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, or Spotify, then it's in the show notes as well. So go click on those. Thank you very much for watching. Please do click like the Facebook page, or subscribe to the podcast. We have many more long talks coming your way.